All right. Well, it's NBA Finals week, and we have Dustin Dopirak with us from the Indianapolis Star, Jenni Carlson from the Oklahoman, because it's the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals. Just like everyone predicted at the beginning of the season, these would be the two teams that would be left standing. And since we're talking about predictions, it seems like it's going to be a short series, right? A sweep is what everyone is calling for. Is that about right?
Not everybody. I
know
mean,
about a sweep.
yeah.
That's all I've heard is sweep, sweep, sweep. Foregone conclusion.
I mean, I keep seeing Thunder in 5, and I from the people that have really that really follow this. I mean, I think you see a lot of the same stuff. I know this is how Zach Lowe put it, was that the intellectually honest thing seems to be to say Thunder in 5. I mean, because you just look across the board, it's kind of statistical categories, and you say, all right, well, that's what that adds up to. Thunder historically great defense. They play a lot of depth, so that the Pacers' advantage that they would have against almost every other team they played in the playoffs is kind of negated by that. And you've got the MVP and all those things. So it's like you just sort of look at numbers. I mean, like Pacers, actually, the Thunder, I think, have a more efficient offense than the Pacers do, despite for all the talk of how good the Pacers' offense is. Thunder's numbers are just as good. A lot of that is scoring offense off of defense, because they're able to turn turnovers into layups. They might not be as good in the half court as the Pacers are, or something like that. But the Thunder are able to create so much offense off of defense that it makes them, makes their numbers way more efficient because it causes layups. But I think you look across the board the numbers, and it's hard to say, all right, well, where's that team going to lose? Where's the hole? I mean, even when we certainly covered the game in March, Rick Carlisle came out of that one. They got beat 132, and he said that's the best team on the planet right now. And basically, it was pretty unanimous among that in that locker room at that point that Shea was the MVP. So everybody thinks that's the best team. I don't think it's an insult to the Pacers to say that the Thunder are the favorites, because the Thunder would be favorites against just about anybody, because they're 68-14. That's a top 5 record all time. I mean, like you're talking, the teams that have been better than that are like, the 15-16 Warriors, the 71-72 Lakers, the 96-97 Bulls, the 95-96 Bulls, and that's it. And there's like a Philly team that went 68-13, and that's the ball game in terms of teams all time that have had a better record than this team. So it stands to reason they would have an advantage. Now you will certainly see what the Pacers have done, the way they've won. You can't roll out a team that's like got this kind of team of destiny look to it. You can't roll out a team that's got this kind of depth, that has this kind of ability to make comebacks that just never is basically. Like you can never kill this team. So I mean, I picked Thunder in 6, just to give more credit for that. But I mean, I don't think it'll be a sweep, because I think the Pacers will find a way to pull something off. I don't think they get through this series without managing to pull off a win. You got to give the advantage to Rick Carlisle for his ability to make adjustments. They're going to be able to do something in the series. We got to look at the Thunder having a big advantage because they've got so much stuff.
I think a lot of the things that the Pacers do well, the Thunder does well too.
Yeah.
When you look at having a superstar running the offense, when you look at, as much has been made of the Pacers' pace, their speed, the Thunder's right there too in the playoffs. I think the Pacers' offensive rating is like 117.7. The Thunder's 117.1. So they're basically, and what you said, Dustin, is right. A lot of the Thunder's extra possessions come from the defense. They get out and run. And so I think a lot of what Indiana's really good at, the Thunder's really good at, and maybe a little bit better. I think Carlisle is that the coaching matchup is a question mark, because Rick Carlisle has been at this a very long time, but obviously Mark Daigneault knows how to get the most out of his team. They both have a lot of depth that they've been willing to draw from. So neither team is afraid to go 8, 9, 10 deep. They've got great superstars. Obviously, I think you got to put Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in an upper echelon, but Tyrese Haliburton obviously playing fantastically in these playoffs. And, one of the big questions about the Thunder is probably the thing that the Pacers have done best is sort of win games unexpectedly. The Thunder, didn't have a ton of close games in the regular season, didn't play a lot of crunch time minutes, and got into that series against the Nuggets and struggled a little bit to close some games. But then by the end, this team it's a fast learning team. They learn from wins and losses really well. And so they learned from some of those early disappointments and really closed games well when it came to that Nugget series. And then obviously we saw that in the Timberwolves series, closing out games. So some of the stuff that maybe they weren't great at when the playoffs started, I think they've gotten much, much better as these playoffs have gone on.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have both talked about Halliburton and SGA, and everyone keeps pointing to that as like the key matchup. But they won't be matched up against each other. One would assume it'll either be Nembhard or Neesmith guarding SGA, and it'll be Lou Dort hounding and face guarding and doing everything he can to make sure Halliburton doesn't affect them. So I mean, it's more of a headline, but less of a matchup. Correct?
I think so. I mean, and if it's not Lou Dort, it's Alex Caruso. And if it's not Alex Caruso, it's Cason Wallace. The Thunder has got a defensive juggernaut, frankly. I mean, defensively, they're so good collectively, but so good individually. They'll roll out lineups and they'll get out there and start playing and, getting turnovers and getting out in transition. And I look around and I'm like, oh, hey, Lou Dort's over on the bench right now, guys. Like, how did this happen? They just keep rolling defenders in. But yeah, Dustin, I don't know who you think will be primary on Halliburton. I think it'll be Dort to start, but I think they'll roll some different guys, different looks out on him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, Dort has been the guy who's had the primary assignment when they played before. And it works very well for the Thunder because, I mean, Dort has the opposite body of Tyrese. I mean, but like Lou Dort looks like he could play a fullback, linebacker, defensive end, wherever you want to put him. Tyrese Halliburton looks like he wouldn't want him anywhere near a football field, more or less, just to protect him. And so, that John Halliburton will get mad at that if he ever hears that, because John actually wanted Tyrese to play football. He wouldn't be a bad wide receiver. And maybe if he got in the weight room a little bit, if he actually
if he played that other football, that might be more.
That's true. He's a little bit better built for that. But I mean, I think if they made him play football, he'd actually get in the weight room, which has not been a Tyrese thing for his whole life. But yeah, no, I mean, Dort has managed to, and basically what we've seen in these playoffs is like when you're guarding the best player, you're allowed to hug him, like you're allowed to literally put both arms around him and hold him down. And like every team's doing this. This isn't like Lou Dort can do this and nobody else can. Like the Pacers are doing this, the Knicks were doing this, like they are getting away with clutching and grabbing the best player, not letting him move. And so Lou Dort is going to be better at that than anybody because he's big, like he's capable of holding you right where you are and making sure you go nowhere. Obviously when it comes to the matchup, you are going to try to the thing for the Pacers isn't, they have to peel him off. And what the Pacers have done well when there have been these times during the season when they've just decided like, all right, like we can't let Halliburton get swallowed up. Basically teams are face guarding him. They're putting like one guy on him and saying, I'm not even looking at what's behind me. I'm just keeping you in front of me and I'm going to hug you if I tackle you, if I have to. They have to be able to peel that guy off. Basically, so screening becomes such a big point of what the Pacers have to do. That I think really helped them out. I think the period right after the All-Star break when Halliburton really put up his best numbers of the year. They were very intentional about that. The Memphis Grizzlies did that with Jalen Wells back in December, and they were basically able to take Halliburton out of the game entirely. And so they had Memphis the first game out of the break, and they basically spent like a couple days in that practice being like, all right, we're going to peel Jalen Wells off of Halliburton. And then like he had a really good like maybe 21-9 or something in that game, and that really got him rolling going forward. But like a big part of why he was doing so well was Miles Turner was doing a great job of just really setting hard screens, squaring guys up and getting somebody off of Halliburton. So they've got to be really intentional with that. Turner's got to do a really good job. And Turner, Siakam, anybody else on the floor, whoever's going to be out there has to be willing to set good, solid screens and dislodge against Dort, which is a lot easier for me to say that than it is for somebody to actually stand in front of that 6'4", 220-pound dude and actually do it. But that's going to be a big key. But also to Jenny's point, like Dort can come off the floor and they can put Cason Wallace on him or Alex Caruso on him, and Jalen Williams is on the floor. I mean, they've got 4 top of the line perimeter defenders, truly top of the line, and any of those 4 guys is the best defender on anybody else's team.
Yeah, and if they screen and they switch the screens, the chance of one of those guys ending up on Halliburton instead of Dort, it's not. I don't think the Thunder feels.
No,
yeah,
it doesn't fix anything. You'd rather have him Dort off of him than the alternative. Basically, you'd rather be dealing with the switch, but the switch isn't good either. Like it's not a great situation. Like you're hoping you can get it at 1-5 and you can get him around Hardenstein or something like that and get him in an isolation situation there. But even that's not great. Or if it's Holmgren, like that, even that stuff isn't great. It's not the best case scenario, but it's certainly better than being tackled by Luguentz Dort.
Can I tell a quick Lou story? A few years ago, I think it might have been right after the pandemic, so maybe the 21 season, he comes back, and of course we're having the preseason media day, and he's already, in these parts, people already knew how good of a defensive player he was. I think it was still building nationally just how good he was, but he gets asked in the preseason, what did you work on in the off season? What'd you do? Blah, blah, blah. At one point he says, yeah, I took up some cross training and I did jujitsu. And I got the mic eventually and I said, Lou, before I ask my question, I want you to know there are lots of people around the NBA who are not very excited to hear that you did hand-to-hand combat in the off season. So this guy, yeah, you're right, Dustin. I mean, if you wanted to put, shoulder pads and a helmet on him, I think he could be a bruising fullback, tight end. I mean, I don't know what he could play, but yeah, he's just got that build and that mentality to just get after people. So I think it's going to be, I was really kind of expecting a little bit more fireworks, I guess, if you will, some drama between him and Anthony Edwards in the last round. We didn't really see it. I don't know. I don't know what happened there. If it just got to the point where the T-Wolves felt like they were, up against a wall and you didn't sort of have that back and forth. But I really thought those two would get after it. But I think this could be a good, fun matchup between Halliburton and Dort in the finals.
Sure.
And one of the things that you saw a lot in the Knicks series was when the Knicks would switch off on Halliburton, the Pacers were very good about finding Pascal Siakam and against a smaller defender in the post, and he just ate. I mean, that's why he had 3 30-point games in that series. It was a lot of the times it was, let's find the mismatch. There's not going to be the mismatch on the switches here against the Thunder. Like you said, I mean, they 1 through 5 they can defend, so that's something that the Pacers are really gonna have to work around. Jenni, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about, because yes, the Thunder were the best team in the NBA, and like you said, one of the top 5 records of all time. But I feel like the nation doesn't know this team. Like, they know SGA or they know Shea Gilgeous, they know that he was the MVP, but how many games have they really watched of him? But I mean, you go down this list. How many people know who Jalen Williams is? How many know that he was an all-star this year? How many people know Cason Wallace? I mean, they know Chet Holmgren because he was a high pick, but a lot of these pieces, I think it's going to be the first time the country gets to see really how good these guys are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it is still a lot of discovery for the broader basketball fan. This is a team that was built from within. I mean, yes, they acquired Alex Caruso via trade and they got Isaiah Hartenstein as a free agent. But for the most part, this is a team that was, put together through the draft. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander came over in the Paul George trade, but he didn't come over as the MVP. I mean, it wasn't like when they got him, they thought, oh, yeah, he's the cornerstone piece. Now, Sam Presti, the general manager of the Thunder, I think that Shea was the one non-negotiable. If the Clippers wanted Paul George, and they wanted Paul George to play with Kawhi Leonard, they had to give Oklahoma City Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So clearly, Sam Presti loved what he saw out of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander going into the draft, his rookie year in LA. But, obviously they didn't know if he would become this. But you're right. I mean, beyond Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's, there's not a lot of widespread knowledge about this team. Jalen Williams, a guy that was basically, lightly recruited out of high school in Arizona, ends up at Santa Clara, then is a late lottery pick. But when he was, I don't know if a lot of people nationally thought, oh, the Thunder just got another all-star to go with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. They just thought, okay, here's this guy. Well, and then in the same draft, they drafted another Jalen Williams who comes off the bench, who's sort of the third big man, kind of a bruising big guy from Arkansas. So they got the 2 Jalen Williamses, which, at the time it just sort of seemed kitschy and fun. Well, the first Jalen Williams, the one from Santa Clara, has developed into a big-time two-way player, not to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's level yet, but he's a guy that can shoot it, he can drive it, he's more power than finesse, where, Shea he's like water through rocks, you don't quite understand how he gets to the basket, but there he goes. Jalen Williams is more of a, forceful, aggressive type of guy. So he's really come on in these playoffs. Last year, he was a little bit up and down for for the Thunder in the playoffs. Had some nice nights, but then had some nights where he disappeared a little bit, and I think made things really hard on Shea. So he's become more of a consistent threat. And then obviously Chet Holmgren is the third leg of that big three. And, it wasn't very long ago, guys, less than, 7 months, he is in bed laid up with a broken hip. And you watch him play now and you forget that he had that injury so recently, but he's been phenomenal, and then they've got some great pieces in Lou Dort, Isaiah Hartenstein, Caruso we talked about before. But yeah, definitely a team built largely from within and role players that are fantastic. I mean, just great at their role. And I think a lot of that, when you talk about the way this team plays together, role players knowing their role, I think a lot of that goes back to Shea. He's a guy that's very unassuming. The way he plays is the way he is. He's just, very low key. If things aren't, if he doesn't get the shot, it's not like he's, stomping around and, what's wrong with you guys? He really is a team guy. And I think that is percolated out to this young team, and they just understand their roles and they play to them. And they're definitely not old enough to be this good, to be this complete. But I think a lot of that goes back to a mature, superstar. I think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is not only a superstar, but a mature one. And I think that's really helped them to get where they are earlier than their age would indicate they should be.
Who's going to be a bigger pest in this series, Caruso or TJ McConnell?
That's a great question.
I mean, Caruso's probably the better defender, but like McConnell's annoying on both ends. They both are. They both are very pesky, and the Caruso's obviously just better built for it. But McConnell just never stops. Like he's like a gnat. It just never ends with him. And you have to guard him when he's going to run through these 3 or 4 actions where he's going to run underneath the basket and then circle back around and then run around it again and then somehow throw this 6-footer up that's going to go in every time. Both of those guys are absolute pests. But Caruso's got a little more size, and Caruso's capable of he annoyed the heck out of Jokic in that series in Denver. And so both of those guys can be their own separate kinds of problem, but they're both a problem.
Yeah, I agree. It was interesting today. I had a chance to listen to Alex Caruso's media availability here at Media Day, and he admitted, which I guess you have to. I mean, inherently I knew, but like he said, you can't play at playoff intensity all season. He was like, I think he said something like, I wasn't slacking, which I wouldn't assume anybody would be, but it was like, you can't really crank it up to this level until you're in the playoffs. And I think he has taken it to another level. We've joked here that he's never going to have to buy another drink, another meal, another anything in this city. I mean, even though, he could buy us all out a million times over with this salary, people here have taken to him, love to see him come in games. And obviously, like you said, Dustin, I mean, when he goes in and starts guarding Jokic in that Denver series, I thought, well, this is just for a possession or two, right? And then it worked. It worked, it was like, wait, what? So yeah, he is obviously his most effective against, other guards, but clearly, and I think we've seen it with Jalen Williams. I think we've seen it with Lou Dort. We've seen it with several of these guys where they're able to guard bigger or smaller. And I think that gives them such great defensive flexibility. Again, when we were talking about screens, if a guy comes off a screen, they switch. I don't think they feel like they're losing a whole lot if they switch off to a bigger or a smaller, because so many of these guys have guarded out of position, if you will. And so I think that's a really interesting side note. But yeah, I think could McConnell and Caruso guard each other? Is that a possibility? Because that would be fun.
It is. I would think. I mean, it's a shame to put it this way, but they'll probably both. I would think Caruso will be of higher priority. They'll put him on somebody. As long they try not to play without Halliburton or Siakam on the floor, and so I would think that as long as one of those guys on the floor, Caruso's guarding one of them, more or less. But but it's a non-zero possibility. There will be a Caruso, McConnell Spider-Man moment.
That's right.
And so it could definitely happen. It's not out of the question, and that's for sure.
One of the keys to the series is turnovers. The Thunder force you into turnovers like crazy. I mean, that's their DNA. We want to, defense, historically great defense. They want to force turnovers. The Pacers don't commit turnovers. I mean, you've got Tyrese Halliburton, who's got triple doubles without a turnover. Like, he's getting double digit assists, no turnovers. That's his thing. So it's, they're hitting head on. How does that, who blinks first in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, so last time they played, I think it was 11-9. I think the Pacers committed 11 and the Thunder committed 9. And but the Thunder were able to convert those to 10. There was 10-7 in points off turnovers. It was 15-7 on fast break points. Thunder won 15-7 on fast break points. So it could be a small. I mean, the thing is, it's going to be a small margin. I mean, it's not going to be a big number probably because they're both just going to be smart with the ball. But it could, like the small difference could make a bigger difference. I mean, it might be, one team has 7, the other team has 10, and that difference of 3 ends up being 6 points, and that might end up being significant. So I mean, I'm more than likely it's going to end up being a wash. Close to that. Basically, there might be a small edge by the end of the day. But I think that does allow. I think if the Pacers are smart and don't turn the ball over, like that could keep the Thunder a little bit closer to them. And that's the biggest point is like if they just have to, that at least keeps them in striking distance. The way the Thunder run away with this thing is if they get into the Pacers. So I mean, the Pacers will probably commit more turnovers than they usually do. The Thunder will probably cause fewer turnovers than they usually do. And so you'll see a number in there, and it's just a question of, all right, what's that look like in the end? They'll probably, both teams will probably, there will be an effect in both ways, basically. Like because the Thunder are so good at it, the Pacers will commit a couple more turnovers. Because the Pacers are so good at not turning it over, the Thunder will, get a few less than they usually get. So it's, you'll find kind of a midpoint of where that ends up. And so, you're hoping the Pacers. It's important if you're the Pacers to minimize that. It's just really critical. I mean, you have to presume you're not going to have 0 giveaways. You're not going to, you're not going to pick the perfect game as far as that's concerned. But you have to keep it as low as you can. And obviously the challenge is doing that while playing with pace. And again, the Pacers are exceptional at that. That is their great superpower is the ability to play as fast as they do, make as many passes as they do, and complete them. I mean, it is wild to consider. I mean, I think they were 2nd or 3rd in the league in passes last year. They led the league in passes. You can check this out on the tracking data in NBA.com. And they're still near the bottom of the league. I mean, it's like you're bound to have in football more interceptions if you pass the ball more. Like just by virtue of you're putting the ball in the air that much, at some point the other team's going to get it. That's the Pacers that's not been the case for them. They've been really smart about where they throw the ball. And so, if you're the Thunder, another big thing you've got to be ready for and where you can kind of, take something out is, the Pacers throw ahead game. And that's one thing that Tom Thibodeau made a point of recognizing that Halliburton is so good at kicking ahead and Siakam is so good at running ahead and getting, Toppin's great at it too. Toppin tends to run ahead where there's nobody there and Siakam tends to go where there's one man to beat and he's able to beat that guy. And so if you're the Thunder, you've got to be just ready for that. And basically the ball's going to be up in the air. If you have a chance to pick it off, that's where your opportunity is. And if you just take away that pass, give Halliburton the reason not to throw it, then you slowed them down. That is going to be a key piece to watch is how often are the Pacers able to kick ahead and how often are they not? How do the Thunder take that part of the game away? Because that's a big part of their transition game. They're able to do that often, makes and misses. And that's a big part of their game.
Yeah, and the Thunder's faced some high-paced teams in the Western Conference playoffs. They did it differently. Memphis obviously plays with great pace because they've got Ja Morant, who's quicker than anybody else in the building. So they push with their physicality. The Nuggets are also very up-tempo, but they're the throw it down, and a lot of times it's Jokic getting the rebound and baseball passing it. So they've played 2 teams already that like to get that pace going in different ways. So didn't defend it perfectly and in either way, but did a good enough job to win both those series. I think maybe the thing when it comes to turnovers that if you're the Pacers, because I do think, if they have a 0 turnover game, tip of the cap to them because that will be amazing. But I think when it comes to the Pacers and their turnovers, the kind of turnovers could be as key as anything. dead ball turnovers versus live ball, because can the Thunder convert into a quick, scenario where they're down and scoring in transition. So, obviously I'm, limiting them is, I'm sure, Rick Carlisle's hope and dream, but if you're going to have them and you can avoid letting the Thunder leak out and score easy baskets, if you got a close game, I mean, those type of things matter, whether it's 4 live ball turnovers or 2. I think that could really be definitive if the game gets close down the stretch.
Yep.
All right. Well, take away the All-Stars. So take away Jalen Williams, take away SGA, take away Halliburton, take away Siakam. Who is the one key player off each team that you think will make the difference in this series?
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Start, Jenny.
Yeah, you know what? I'll probably go with Chet Holmgren, because he played so fantastically, especially in that Minnesota series. I think he is, I mentioned earlier that hip injury, that he was basically, bedridden as his hip healed, because that's the only way you can heal the kind of injury that he had. He came back, and when he came back, he integrated pretty well. You saw some big numbers from him with blocks and some points pretty quickly. But I still think the idea that he was going to be, back to normal right away, like that was impossible. So he was going to have to continue to evolve his game. And I think it's still been growing back. So I think you're still seeing a guy that's getting better and better and more comfortable as the playoffs have gone on. So, he's a guy that obviously provides a level of rim protection that, the Thunder can defensively with their guards, guard as hard as they want, be as, aggressive as they want on the perimeter, because if Chet's behind him, they've got a great rim protector there. So I think defensively he's going to be huge. And then he's continued to the games that he's shot it well from deep, from 3. Boy, they've been really hard to handle. So if he can stretch the offense, and give them even more driving lanes for Jalen Williams, for SGA, who I know we're taking out of the equation, but if he can be a threat away from the rim and then get to the rim offensively too, I think he could be a huge, huge factor in this series.
Before I answer mine, Jenny, who do you think they used to guard Siakam? I'm trying to remember who picked him up last time.
Yeah, I got to think they'll probably do a little bit of both of the bigs. They've been starting both Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. So I think with Chet's physicality, it's more likely it's him. But I don't know. I think they're comfortable with both those guys doing a little bit of that duty. So I would probably say Chet. But I don't put any changes on the fly from Mark Dagnall.
Sure. No, absolutely. It is the interesting matchup. It is, I think Tyrese, you have an obvious answer, to go with Dort, but Siakam, like Holmgren doesn't necessarily fit it. Hartenstein doesn't necessarily fit it. And you still have to deal with Turner either way.
Yeah.
And Turner and Hartenstein is this interesting matchup where like Hartenstein's good at everything Turner isn't, and Turner's good at everything Hartenstein isn't. And so they kind of flip back and forth where Hartenstein can own the glass, but Turner can space him out and drag him out there. But I do still think that's probably the most important scenario. But I think Holmgren's really key because the Pacers, when they're really good, they score a bunch of points in the paint, and Holmgren's going to make that a lot more difficult. So mine would be Aaron Nesmith. I've seen this number kicking around that one weakness that the Thunder defense has had is corner threes. That's one thing that stood out. And what Aaron Nesmith does is he shoots corner threes. It's kind of his main deal on offense. He sprints the floor, gets down there, waits till the ball finds him. Obviously, he moves it when it gets to him, and he's improved as a dribble drive guy. And you've seen his kind of in between game, come a long way over the course of this. But that's still bread and butter for him, is just be the wing that runs down to the corner and be down there so the ball can find you. I think because Holmgren's so good around the rim, the Pacers absolutely have to shoot it really, really well in this series. That's going to be their best chance to get in this thing. Certainly, that's the reason why they won their most miraculous of their crazy miraculous games, was Aaron Nesmith going absolutely nuts from 3 in the Garden in Game 1. So that's going to be my big one. Sorry, he's obviously got to be able to deal with. He might be on SGA. He'll certainly be on SGA at some point. But even if he isn't, he's got to guard, probably Jalen Williams, I would think. I mean, that's my presumptive lineup at this point would be, put Nembhard on SGA, Halliburton on Dort, which is not easy in and of itself. Like you just don't have a great shot there. But then you've got to put Neesmith on Jalen Williams, and if you can win that matchup, it goes a long way. When Williams has been good, the Thunder have been fantastic. If they've been able to slow him down, that's given other teams a shot. So I think Neesmith has a chance to make an impact on both offense and defense. And he's been a lot better on the glass in the playoffs, really, than I've ever seen him in regular season play. So I think all of those things make him a really key piece.
It's just a shame that all the you finally get a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup with the Oilers, and now everyone's going to be watching the NBA Finals with what was it? You got Nembhard, SGA, Dort is Canadian as well. Matherin is Canadian. This is an all Canada final here. It's
a big deal, and Montreal's showing up. Matherin, and I asked Dort about Matherin the other day. He said that Matherin's kind of like a brother to him.
Yeah.
It's like it's Quebec. That's not, like Ontario has had a huge, basketball sort of explosion, if you will. It hasn't necessarily gone to the other provinces, but you got a couple out of Montreal. So
are you telling me there's no Star in Prince Edward Island or Saskatchewan? You're telling me it's just Ontario?
I haven't been to an AAU tournament in Saskatchewan.
that is some PEI erasure right there.
Hey, there was some French language question and answering today. So so the Canadian influence is alive and well.
It rolls deep. Pascal Siakam's from Cameroon, which was apparently a French colony at some point. And so Matherin and Siakam were both doing like half of their interviews in French when they went to Paris earlier this year, which was fun to watch. It was utterly useless for me to watch because it was fun. They certainly were comfortable, and I had understood nothing of what they were saying.
Google Translate to the rescue.
Yeah, it's probably like our Indianapolis beat writer. This is what it is.
All right. Before I say adieu to all you guys, that's my French right there. That's all I got.
There you go.
Nice.
Dustin, we had you said Thunder in 6. Jenny, we didn't get your prediction. So we'll let you finish with your prediction for this series, and I'm sure it's Thunder in 4, right?
No. I did pick Thunder in 5. Maybe that's the sexy pick, and I just fell in line. I don't know. But, yeah, I think I was leaning 5 or 6, and I went with 5 because – man, the home court advantage here is just, it's been huge. I mean, in a playoffs where you guys know well, home court has been stolen from a lot of teams. The Pacers did it as well as anybody. The Thunder's just been really good at home. I mean, they have not lost a lot of games here. And so, thinking about, somebody said the other day that, the Thunder's lost 4 games in the playoffs in total. It's hard to see them losing 4 in the finals. Could it happen? Absolutely. Sure. But I think this is a team that right now is playing great. I think, like I said before, I think their pieces are just a little bit better than what the Pacers have. So I'm going Thunder in 5, win it here in Oklahoma City.
It's worth noting the Pacers have only lost 4 games in the playoffs as well. If my math is right. Is my math right? Dustin, is my math right on that? Right.
Yeah, because it was one of each of the first 2 series.
So someone's going to lose 4 in this series. Who will it be?
Matt, what's your prediction? What's your prediction, Matt? You got one?
He got frozen.
I'm the only one on the limb here. I'm on an island by myself. I said Pacers in 6 is what I said. So
there you go. Okay,
but it's a completely homer pick. But I picked the Pacers to beat the Cavs. It happened. I picked the Pacers to beat the Knicks in 6. It happened. So maybe, I can make something happen here. My son is he's like, Dad, you can't pick the Thunder, right? Don't worry, Palmer. So
at least
I can't disappoint. I like
he's not liking it now. All that motivation out on the table. That's important.
Yeah, well, he's not enjoying the 8:30 start times because he's 7 years old and his bedtime is 7:30. He was enjoying it when we were in Mountain Time for the last year.
You're not extending his bedtime.
Yeah, we might let him watch the first quarter. Maybe the first quarter. It is summertime, but he's got camp.
Come on.
He's got camp. He's got camp coming up. He can't be a zombie at camp. No, it's a big deal. All right.
Wait, how old is he now?
7. He's 7.
Okay. 8-year-old me absolutely got 1990 Pirates playoffs. That I fought hard for that. Made that happen. I'm just saying. Well,
as someone who lived in Atlanta during that time when the Braves kept beating.
No way. Okay, we're ending this conversation. We're ending this conversation.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. You can get all of the Thunder content at the Oklahoman. Jenny and her team do a great job covering the Thunder. Obviously, Dustin and our group at the IndyStar do a great job covering the Pacers. So be sure to visit both sites. We'll have tons of content. We'll have tons of collaboration over the course of the series because we all work for the same company. Thank you. All right. So this has been From Way Downtown podcast with Dustin and Jenni Carlson. NBA Finals, guys. Here we go.